Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up, and welcome into a special off-season edition. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am your host, Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, and we've got the rest of the GSM crew here to break down a little bit of college basketball. Kicking us off, the captain of our ship, MC Holland34 on Twitter, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, welcome in. We're getting mad close to the start of college basketball. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. Yeah, it's around the corner, less than 2 weeks away. So, I'm looking at all these odds and numbers and ready for the DFS, rosters, the lineups to come out and see what we're looking at there. So I'm excited to talk some sports betting, who we like, some long shots, some National Player of the Year type stuff. So, let's just kick it off. Jay, man, how's it going?
What's up, guys? We're going to get these rest of these TikToks of our top 20 finish here pretty soon. Like you said, college basketball start is right around the corner. We're going to roll out the rest of our TikToks. If you're not already subscribing to us on YouTube and liking us on TikTok and Twitter and all that jazz, give us a follow there, catch our top 20, all the rest of the stuff that we're putting out. And today, like Mike said, focusing on the betting, a little bit of odds, a little bit of action today, Eric. So excited to be here to talk betting. Let's roll.
Man, it's going to be a fun one. And before we jump in, we do have a special guest on today's show. We've got our friend the Moth chilling on the top of Jay's hat. If you're checking in on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, but also show our friend Moth some love. Hit that like button. Let him know that he's got a home here. We're going to see if we can keep him on with us throughout the entirety of the show. And like the guys talked about, today we are taking a look at the upcoming college basketball season, but specifically from a betting perspective. So we're going to be going through each conference. We're also going to talk about some of the mid-majors and kind of outside players and talk about the teams where we like their odds to win the conference. We also like their odds and their value to win a national championship. Kick us off, we're going to start with the ACC. Obviously, we've got North Carolina up top coming off of a national championship appearance, and pretty interesting kind of layout to this group of teams, right? A couple of clear favorites here, but also a handful of teams a little bit further down the sheet that offer a pretty interesting price, right? A couple teams, I should say, that can maybe get hot at the right time and offer some pretty good value at the odds that they have laid out there. So, Jay, let's start off with you. And I want to know the team of this group here in the ACC where you like their odds to make it out of the conference and potentially make a national championship run.
Yeah, I think Virginia had plus 750 to win this conference and plus 4,000 to win the national title. It's pretty good value there. You look at their head coach, Tony Bennett, has obviously done this before, has won it all at Virginia with that slow, methodical style, played solid defense. It's been done before. And then you also take into consideration all 5 starters returning for them. You can't really understate how rare that is in this day and age in college basketball to have all 5 starters returning, to have that sort of cohesiveness on a roster. It's pretty impressive that they have that, and that's going to bode them well in a tough conference. Forward Jaden Gardner, a potential all-league player, averaged 15 and 6 last year. Guard Reese Beekman is very elite on the defensive end. Mike has his top 100 transfer list over on drroto.com. And Ben Vanderplas from Ohio came over to Virginia, averaged a little over 14 points a game and almost 7 boards. This is an experienced team. The recruiting class really wasn't, 13th ranked is pretty good. And when you combine that with the fact that they're experienced, they brought in a pretty good recruiting class. This is the team that's going to make some noise here in the ACC.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Jay. I mean, you look at the odds. I mean, that's pretty nice, right? Plus 750 for a coach and a team that's done it. Eric, do you like those odds as well?
Yeah, I do, right? The thing that you mentioned is that's really key for me is it's just the experience here, right? Coaches been in place for a good while now, a bunch of starters returning. So to get a team like Virginia at plus 750 makes good sense to me. Mike, we've got a team, or rather you've got a team that you want to talk about that is one of the favorites in the conference, but is typically sitting up top. There's a little bit of value here with the team that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so you look here and it's Duke, right? And no Mike Krzyzewski this year, so we're going to get the new coach, and John Shire's been with the program, so it's not like he's coming into something completely new. He's recruited some of these players, and with Duke, it feels like every year they're going to be a major player because they recruit lights out, right? They're typically a number one type recruiting class, which they were this year. You got 3 of the top 4 recruits coming in from 24/7 Composite. You got NBA talent guys like Dariq Whitehead, Kyle Filipowski, Derek Lively. So, while I don't want to say they're going to struggle early, but we're not going to really know what this team looks like until middle of the year. And it wouldn't surprise me. I know we have North Carolina with the top odds here, but it wouldn't surprise me if Duke kind of mid-season looks like the best team in the conference. And especially when you have some guys coming back, you've got Jeremy Roach, going to be a veteran leader. He was really good in the tournament last year. And you're bringing back a guy from Illinois who is a great shooter, Jacob Grandison. That's an area where Duke really struggled last year. Is going to struggle with kind of the guys that they have coming in this year. Last year, they had shot lights out with all the guys that got drafted in the NBA. So, I really like this roster. Really like what Coach John Shire's done. You look at it plus 1,600 for a national championship. Whenever you have this type of NBA talent, you got guys that – 6th and 7th guys like Jaden Shutt, some guys that aren't even going to really see that many minutes that are probably going to be drafted in the first, second round of the NBA draft. So kind of crazy, but anytime I see something like this, especially on the national championship scene, it's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned North Carolina as you were talking about the Duke trajectory, and we saw it last year, right? Incoming head coach replacing a legend. Took a little while to find his footing, but very much so got hot and made a deep run. I think there's a lot of things about this Duke team that sets up in a similar way. And specifically, it was a late add through the portal, right? But Grandison coming in, the outside shooting was the biggest question mark for this team during the offseason. So they at least, found a guy that can potentially address that right away. We'll see if some of these incoming recruits can develop a little bit in that area, but definitely like the Duke call to round out my pick for the ACC. I'm going chalk. North Carolina plus 140. They're obviously coming off of a national title game appearance. Came up just a little bit short against Kansas, but man, that Kansas team was loaded. And you look at what UNC is trotting out there this year. They've got their big 4 back, right? Obviously, it all starts with Armando Bacot, but they're returning Davis, Love, Leaky Black, right? A lot of guys that have, that deep playoff experience from a year ago. Obviously, they're going to be trying to navigate the waters of playing without Brady Manick, but they went out and they added Pete Nance through the transfer portal. He's coming in averaging almost 15 points a game, shot 45% from 3 last year. So really versatile piece that they plug in. And I like them to not only make a run to win the ACC, but I almost like their national championship odds more, right? They're plus 900. They were so close last year. And I think, had they started their run, had they had a little bit more time to start the year together, I think they would actually be the favorite heading into the tournament. They made it in as a lower seed. Now that they've got that year under their belt and they do have that tournament experience together, I think that they're in prime position to make another deep, deep run in this season to come. Before we close out and switch over to players of the year, Mike, any team here from the ACC that you think can potentially be a bit of a dark horse, a little bit more of a long shot that you think there's some value on?
Yeah, I look at it, and then what you look for in the long shot, right, is either one, like a superior talent on their team. So, like, someone like a Terquavian Smith, but North Carolina State at plus, what is that, 8,000? Probably not going to win the regular season title. But I look at someone like Notre Dame, who the other piece of that would be to have experienced players coming back. These guys are going to be pretty old and super experienced, and they shoot the lights out of the 3. So you got Nate Laszewski, Cormac Ryan, Dane Goodwin. They're all coming back. These guys just all shoot over 40% from 3. And then you got a star freshman. We saw Blake Wesley head out to the NBA draft, who had a really solid freshman year. Now you're getting J.J. Starling coming in. And he looks, from everything we've been hearing and kind of reading about. This guy is ready to explode onto the scene. And you get the transfer too from Niagara, who's Marcus Hammond, who did some really good things in the mid-major ranks. So if I'm looking at it, I don't really know if I like these national championship odds for them. Obviously 10,000, but it's an experienced team. Who knows, man? They were up there. I believe they finished second last year in the ACC. So why not, right? I mean, it's a lot of the same guys coming back. And yeah, who knows what Starling could become.
Man, I had plenty of solid DFS runs built around our guy Nate from Notre Dame. So happy to talk about him anytime that we can. Want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the guys that we like for the Wooden Award for the Player of the Year. I've already talked about North Carolina as my favorite, as my choice to come out of the ACC. So it makes perfect sense for me to go with Armando Bacot. Easily their best players, currently sitting at plus 900 odds to win the Player of the Year. And we saw him absolutely run roughshod over college basketball last year. Averaged a double-double, 16.6 points, 12.5 rebounds per game, 6'10", 240. He's a monster, right? He's a lot for a lot of these smaller teams to handle, and specifically with the Tar Heels making that appearance in the title game, with them being one of the favorites to win the title, I do think that it adds some public sentiment, right? There's a lot of hype around the Tar Heels this preseason. There's a lot of goodwill towards this team. Everyone's expecting a lot of things. So I do think that helps, Bacot's odds to potentially win the Wooden Award when it's all said and done. Mike, want to shift over to you. We'll stick with the Blue Devils. Who do you like as a potential Player of the Year candidate from Duke?
Yeah, so looking at DK Sportsbook, there's a couple of guys that are plus 8,000 for the Wooden Award. You have Dariq Whitehead and Derek Lively. For me, it's Dariq Whitehead. He is a 6'6" slasher that can score at all three levels, and he's really good on the defensive side. I just think from a numbers perspective, he's going to be able to put up better numbers than someone like Lively would, even though Lively's probably going to affect the game more on the defensive end. But yeah, he's the most talented wing, like guard type of all these guys that they're kind of bringing in. So I'm expecting him to have a huge year, potentially be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah, he's certainly got the talent to do so. So not mad at that call at all. Jay, we'll go back to you to close out the ACC here. Who do you like as a potential player to win the Wooden Award when it's all said and done?
Yeah, we mentioned that top 20 that we're doing earlier. Bacot's coming up. That video's coming up for him. But Isaiah Wong's somebody that we've already covered. Miami's going to go as Isaiah Wong goes, I feel. And at plus 6,000, yeah, those are kind of long odds. But when you look at it with the opportunity that's in front of him, with what he did last year, averaging over 15 points a game, the leadership that he showed led the 10-seeded Hurricanes to an Elite Eight appearance. The guy just gets to the rim, breaks down the defense. It's there for the taking. If he has the type of season that Miami hopes that he has, then this is something that, it wouldn't hurt to throw a little bit of cash towards an Isaiah Wong prop bet here. He's just that talented of a player. Put his name in the NBA draft, came back to school, and is somebody that's really hungry. So if we're looking at long shots, Whitehead is plus 8,000, Wong's plus 6,000. And I think that's somebody worth taking a look at least, just because of the opportunity that's in front of him.
Yeah, I like both of those calls, specifically, add value, right? Like, Bacot, my choice is obviously one of the favorites out of this conference, and he's got the inside track. But if you're going to go for an end of season award, you might as well get some juice on it. So definitely like the Whitehead and the Wong calls. Let's shift gears over to the Big East. This conference is kind of interesting, right? It feels like it's sort of haves and have-nots, right? We've got four teams up top with relatively short odds, right? 475 or shorter. And then everyone else is just way out there in terms of their chance of winning the conference itself. So pretty interesting one to break down. Jay, I'm going to come right back to you. Who do you like out of all of these teams in the Big East to potentially make a run? And specifically, who do you like at their price?
I'm gonna stay in that sort of top area with the plus 475 with Xavier Musketeers. Sean Miller, their head coach, is a name that you might recognize. After underachieving last year, comes into Xavier after NCAA issues at Arizona a few years ago, but the guy's a winner. And that's one of those things where college basketball coaches that know how to win, they can basically, if they show they can win one place, they can probably win at another place. So you've got that going for you at Xavier. Super strong front court with Jack Nunge. Zach Fremantle returning. Nunge averaged over 13 points a game, 7.4 boards, and over a block a game. Fremantle was 10 points and almost 6 boards. Kobe Jones out on the wing. Somebody where if you're looking for some sleepers within this conference itself, is somebody that could be in line for a breakout year. 6'6" guy that can do multiple things on offense. Pretty good defensively as well. And then we talk a lot about the transfer portal on our shows here. And Sully Bohm from UTEP averaged nearly 20 points a game last season and shot 36% from three. So Xavier has the bits here at plus 475 to win this conference and plus 8,000 to win the national title. Just an interesting team to take a look at if you're thinking about making a bet out of anybody in this conference.
Yeah, the thing that I like most about this call in particular is I think knock on wood, we're in a position to see Zach Fremantle actually play when healthy, right? He was really nicked up throughout the majority of the season last year, it felt like. So if he's back out there at 100%, definitely like the Musketeers to make a bit of noise. Mike, moving over to you, I know that our friend Dirk Chatlin would probably be pretty happy with your choice. Who you going for out of the Big East?
Yeah, we got to talk with Dirk about the excitement out of Creighton, man. Plus 150. I don't know when the last time that was for Creighton, but the Blue Jays, man, to take down the Big East. I definitely like it. And the big reason why was multiple reasons why, but the first reason why is they're bringing back a trio of now sophomores that really broke out last year. We saw it in that Kansas game. Arthur Kaluma, Ryan Nimhart, Trey Alexander. Man, these guys look like dynamite. Bring back the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, Ryan Kalkbrenner, blocking shots, is a low post presence. He's got a growing offensive game. If he can step out a little bit, I mean, this is going to be a scary offense. And then we talked about the top 20 countdown with Baylor Shireman's in our top 20 countdown coming over from South Dakota State. And we saw him in that game against Providence, wearing the headband, doing all the moves, shooting threes. Just a lot of fun to watch. And, man, this cat, I mean, at his size, can play – I mean, he plays 1 through 4, do a bunch of different things. And this team's just kind of loaded. If they can stay healthy, we had some injuries to Kalkbrenner last year. Ryan Nimhart was injured last year. These guys can stay healthy. Man, they're a top 5 talent on paper. So definitely like them at plus 150. And then I really like the plus 2,500 for the title odds. There's not many weaknesses on this roster right now.
Yeah, there's really not, right? And we talk about last year's Creighton team, specifically with Nemhard and Kalkbrenner. Like, they were a couple of menaces on the defensive side of the ball. So, even if they don't take a big step forward, adding Shireman to a team that has such a solid core definitely is a big part of the reason why Creighton is the favorite to come out of the Big East. Team that I want to talk about, another team that we had a chance to interview over the course of the offseason, get a little bit closer to the Villanova Wildcats, currently sitting at plus 240 to win the conference, plus 4,000 for a national title. Obviously, one of the biggest storylines of the offseason, Jay Wright up and retires, decides to call it a career, and that now puts Coach Kyle Neptune, as the next man up. Fortunately for these Wildcats, he is a system guy, right? He's been in this program for a while. He's one of Jay Wright's disciples, so shouldn't be a big transition in terms of learning new plays, learning a new scheme, or anything like that. But there will be a little bit of time for him to get his feet under him. But if you look at this team, right, Cam Whitemore, absolute stud freshman, and running there alongside with him, Mark Armstrong, another 5-star point guard. So definitely a couple of guys that can come in and offset the loss of Colin Gillespie. And the thing for me that I really like about this bet more than anything is we saw Justin Moore go down with an Achilles injury. Obviously, that was a big blow to the hopes of this program. But he is on track to potentially come back and contribute for this team, right? And if he was out there, these odds would be significantly shorter, right? So this might be an opportunity to get invested into this Villanova program while you're getting plus odds, or at least a little bit longer odds. So Villanova is going to get my vote coming out of the Big East, Mike, any long shots, any underdogs that we think we should talk about here in this conference?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that last year, kind of the same situation. Providence came out of nowhere last year. Really surprised a lot of people. They were a very experienced team last year. Had a lot of guys play a lot of games, and a lot of those guys are gone now. They're plus 4,000 to win this conference, but the talent really hasn't changed, even though they've had a lot of those guys go out the door. Coach Ed Cooley, man, he's just doing his thing. Shocked everybody last year. You getting guard Jared Bynum back, and with more usage and more minutes, this guy's going to be a monster. I mean, he looked absolutely dynamite in a lot of games last year. Bryce Hopkins transfers over from Kentucky. Noah Lott comes over from Louisville. These were highly recruited players coming from, some of the biggest programs in the country. So definitely going to come in and make some things happen. But for me, I mean, it just really starts with Jared Bynum and just what he can do playmaking wise, because he's got to set up and create a lot of different things for this team. They could surprise again. I don't mind the odds if you're, willing to throw a little 20 piece down on it. Hey, there's worse teams out there that, don't have as much upside as this team. So.
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say. And the thing for me I like about this Providence call, right? Like we talked about at the top, there being kind of haves and have-nots in this conference. It's going to be a battle to make it out of this conference, right? Going through the tournament, there's going to be a lot of tough teams stacked up, and some of these guys might kind of knock each other out, right? So teams like Providence are there waiting in the wings. So at those odds, definitely like that call. Let's shift over to player of the year. For me, I want to start by talking about Posh Alexander, one of our favorite guys to play again in the DFS world, out of St. John's, plus 4,000 to win the Wooden Award. This St. John's team, they got busy over the course of the offseason, right? They added a couple of key players to go along with Posh Alexander. I do think that the arrow is kind of pointing up for the Red Storm. And if this team's making a little bit of noise, then that raises the profile of Posh Alexander, right? He's one of the top defensive players in the country. He was DPOY last year in the Big East, and he did that all while averaging 14 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists, right? He shot 50% from the field. So he just had so many ways to contribute to the game. I think if the Red Storm take, even an incremental step forward, I do think that raises his profile enough to potentially compete for this award. Mike, let's go back to you. Touched on this guy a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about your choice for player of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to talk more about Baylor Shireman. I could talk about this guy all day. What can he not do? It's like Boobie Miles in football, right? And he can pass. This guy can shoot from deep. He has a post game. He's one of the best facilitators that's out there. Now coming in, obviously the adjustment period, he was a man amongst boys in the mid-major ranks. So obviously coming into the Big East, it's no slouch. So I'm trusting that his game can transfer over and him not struggle just because of his size and just his skill set. It should be transferable to any school that you go to. And he was a late developer, right? We talked about with Dirk Chatlin about that. And I just love the flashiness, plus 3,500. If Creighton, they're going to be a darling, right, after last year. And just we like to root for per se an underdog here. Obviously, they do play in the Big East, but we haven't seen Creighton do many great things, at least in our time being on this earth. So, if they get into the tournament, they make a run, a lot of people are going to be rooting for them. He's probably going to be the face of this team at the end of the day. So I don't mind it at plus 3,500.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how prolific he was last year, right? If he brings even 90% of that level of effectiveness of that game to a more prominent program in Creighton, all of a sudden he's going to be on a lot of people's radars, right? We're going to see him on a lot of top tens, breaking it down on SportsCenter. So definitely don't mind the Shireman call. Jay, why don't you close out the Big East? Let us know where you're placing your money for the John Wooden Award.
Yeah, you talked earlier about the two incoming freshmen at Villanova, Mark Armstrong and Cam Whitmore, and that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Whitmore at plus 10,000 to win the Wooden Award here. Superstar freshman, ranked 11th in the 24/7 composite rankings. He was a 2022 McDonald's All-American. He played at the FIBA Under-18 America's Championships over the summer, where he was the MVP. Standing out in a sea of talent like that is impressive at any level. 6'6" guy, big body, but super athletic, can get the job done. He did hurt his thumb in practice, but he'll be back in November. Plenty of time for his stock to rise. Like, this is one of those guys that if you're unaware of him, if you're not paying attention to him at the start of the season, maybe because he gets injured, when he starts to play, this is a name that you will hear on a regular basis when you're watching your college basketball highlights. He's just going to be in the middle of it all. And at plus 10,000, talking about a freshman coming in, why not? Why not throw some money at the freshman here at those odds and see what happens, because he is that talented.
Yeah, and kind of like I was saying when I was talking about placing odds on Villanova to win the conference or to win the national title, right? Like, there's value in that number, right? If these Wildcats, they get Justin Moore back, they really start playing well, all of a sudden, one of, if not their best player, is probably going to have shorter odds than plus 10,000. So this is a really opportunistic time, right? If you believe in what Villanova's doing, if you believe that Moore coming back is going to get them back into the national title radar, at least, Cam Whitmore at plus 10,000 is a pretty interesting line. Let's move over to the Big Ten. This is a team that we talked about a few weeks ago as we were previewing the conference, and the theme there really wide open, right? A lot of teams lost their best, or in some cases their best, two players, right? So not a super crystal clear picture on how this one is going to shake out, and because of that, it opens the door for some pretty interesting betting opportunities, right? So Jay, why don't you kick us off? Obviously a ton of teams here in the Big Ten, and a lot of them are kind of bunched together in terms of their betting odds, right? So which one kind of stands out to you as one that is an interesting one to place?
When you've got this many teams bunched together like this, I like to look at a team that's been there and done that before, that has been in the trenches and has performed well with each other towards the end of the season, whether that is just in conference play, whether that's in the tournament. And I'm going to go with Michigan at plus 550 to win this conference, plus 3,500 to win the national championship. Now, you might not agree with everything Juwan Howard, how he's handled every bit of his coaching since he's been there in Michigan, but when it matters the most, Michigan is getting it done, and Juwan Howard is that leader. So you're starting to see a guy that maybe, they like to say Michigan man, right, up there, whether it's hiring for their football teams or their basketball teams or whatever it is. And Juwan Howard is that guy, and he's proven that he can lead a team pretty deep in a tournament. But the next step for them, I think, will be to show that consistency in the regular season. And I do like these odds at plus 550. Of course, it starts with Hunter Dickinson, who we just covered in our top 20. The wide open nature of this conference can lead to anything. And if Dickinson can really fine tune his game a little bit and lead this team to where he needs to go, I feel like Michigan will go as far as Dickinson can take them, as he's, like we've said in the top 20, was a man among men at times in this conference. But the important thing to think about if you're going to talk about betting on Michigan is this freshman class that's coming in. Jet Howard, yes, that Howard, Juwan Howard's son, is coming on in. Physical 6'8" guard that can score the basketball. Forward Terrace Reed is an absolute bruiser down low and the highest rated guy coming in. And Yusef Kayat is a late international signing at 6'9" and can stretch it for the Wolverines. Jalen Llewellyn coming in from Princeton is going to be key. Averaged almost 16 points per game for them and a couple of assists per game as well. This is a very solid team. And like we said, when it's all bunched together like this, you got to look at Michigan and like those odds at coming out of this conference. We got plus 475 here on the screen. I believe I said 550 earlier. So DK Sports betting right now has them at plus 475 to win this conference.
Okay, a little bit of line movement there, which is a fair point, right? Make sure to go around and shop around your odds and find where your best price is. The thing that you mentioned for me that really stands out, and we heard a lot of this when we talked with Michael Cohen over the course of the summer, covers these Michigan Wolverines. Big Ten has been a war of attrition, right? Michigan is one of the very few teams that held on to their best players. So with Hunter Dickinson in the mix, certainly good cause to be one of the favorites to come out of the Big Ten. Mike, let's shift gears over to you. at least a perennial powerhouse, historically speaking, is the team that's caught your eye. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, man, that's crazy. If you look at these odds that we kind of looked at were just from last night, and it looks like there's already been movement on a lot of
Getting
these
close.
odds. Yeah, man. So
People laying
we're getting
bets.
closer, exactly. So we're seeing, last night it looks like Indiana was plus 400, down to plus 320. So if you got it in last night, getting a few extra coins there. But yeah,
closing line value.
exactly, man. So yeah, you look at Michigan too, moving up. So this is going to kind of be a theme in the Big Ten all year. These odds are going to go up and down as you go through the year. And really for Indiana, they bring the most talent back from last year. Everyone lost star power. I mean, look at all the guys in the NBA that are balling right now. You got Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey. I mean, these were Johnny Davis. These were guys that were starring in the Big Ten last year. And, we just talked about Hunter Dickinson. He's one of the ones coming back. Well, Trace Jackson Davis is that guy too. He's coming back. He's a nightly double-double threat, has really, raised his game, had an opportunity to go to the NBA, but deciding to come back, and he's going to pair up with Race Thompson, who he's played with for a couple of seasons, and that's a devastating front court. Might not offer a lot of outside shooting, which could be a problem for Indiana. But Xavier Johnson feels like he's been in college for forever. He's manning the point again. He's going to have to be real solid, though. Can't turn the ball over, but you would hope with more experience, more minutes under his belt, obviously, you would calm that down. But I like someone to really step up on this team. That's Tamar Bates. I think he's going to take a huge jump this year. Super athletic guard. So I think that's only going to help Indiana on the perimeter. You look at their national title odds. We had them last night at plus 3,500. I don't know if I like going there. I do like them to win the Big Ten because they are going to be super experienced. But as far as like getting all the way, we've seen the Big Ten, man. They haven't been great. They've been getting a bunch of teams in the tournament, but as soon as they get in the tournament, it feels like they're part of the big upsets that kind of happen, other than Michigan, who's been doing the upsetting. So yeah, I think if you're looking at it from a conference perspective, getting Indiana now at plus 320, still think it's a good value.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, and the theme that you brought up there is spot on, right? I'll transition over to my team here. I'm going to go with Purdue plus 650 to win the conference, but plus 4,500 to win the Natty, right? And one thing that is clear about the Big Ten, these teams are purpose built to win the Big Ten, to compete with other teams in the Big Ten. But once they get onto that national stage, it's an entirely different stylistic game, right? So it's really interesting looking at the odds overall in this conference. A lot of teams that have pretty decent odds to make their way out and win the conference, but all of them are considered long shots in the national scene. So with Purdue, we've got Matt Painter coming back. Certainly knows how to win. He's really regardless of how his roster comes together. Obviously, they're dealing with the losses of Jaden Ivey, Trevion Williams, but the big man Zach Edey back again for another year. Talked with our friend Mike Carmen a few weeks ago about this Purdue team, and not only is he super bullish on what Edey can do and his opportunity to step forward into a more prominent role for the Boilermakers, but also was absolutely over the moon about freshman guard Braden Smith, right? He's a guy that is coming in as a freshman, might take a little bit of time to transition to the collegiate level, but has literally everything that you're looking for in a difference maker on the court. So Purdue again, 650 for their conference odds. I like that bet a lot. Plus 450 for the Natties, probably one that I would walk away from. But ultimately, all three of the teams that we talked about are teams that have at least some key players returning, and there aren't a lot of squads in the Big Ten that can say that. One more squad that I think can say that is our long shot for the conference. Mike, why don't you tell us about where you're looking for some long odd value?
Yeah, for long odd value, and it looks like this line has moved since last night as well, from plus 1,200 to plus 1,100. So if you got in last night, an extra 100 there. But yeah, it's going to be Ohio State. We really don't know what this team is going to look like. It's going to be a really young team, but they're going to have a bunch of transfers that are older, and then they're also getting Justice Suing back, who we haven't seen since he's been injured. So over the last year, man, if these freshmen can come together, like Bryce Sensabaugh. We're hearing a lot about him on reports, just him blowing it up. Bruce Thornton, Roddy Gale. Thornton's probably going to be a key factor, being more of a lead guard, which was kind of one of the missing pieces that we talked about over the offseason. But you're bringing in 3 top 100 transfers that were on my board. We had Tanner Holden, really good scoring wing out of Wright State. Yeah, Sean McNeil's played a ton of basketball in the Big 12. He can stretch the floor. He comes over from West Virginia. And Isaac Likely, he's a bruising guard who can back down and kind of create for others. Kind of struggles at scoring at times. So it'll be interesting to see how him and Bruce Thornton kind of man the lead guard role. But this is a team that's going to take some time, and we're not going to know this product until probably January, heading into late January, what exactly this team looks like. So if you're looking at a long shot, plus 1,200 for Ohio State, they have talent. It's just kind of unproven, and there's also a lot of guys that are going to be in expanding roles and coming over from mid-majors or getting larger roles like McNeil and Likely are going to have. So definitely don't mind placing some coin on Ohio State, Steve, in a wide open Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, these Buckeyes absolutely got after it in the portal. 3 guys from your top 100 big board over at drroto.com. So definitely like getting some long odds there. Moving over to the player of the year, I will stick with my Purdue Boilermakers. I mentioned him a moment ago, but I like the line on Zach Edey, plus 3,500. He's a guy that was very effective in this offense, in this system a year ago, 14.5 points per game, almost 8 rebounds per game, getting better than a block per game. And this was all on 19 minutes, right? We talked about all of the guys that have exited Purdue. Ivy's out. Trevion Williams is out. So now Edey can step into a very big void and contribute in a number of different ways, right? So kind of like we were talking about with a lot of these players, if Purdue is a team that starts making a run, starts looking like a favorite to come out of this conference, all of a sudden I think Edey is legitimately on the radar to win the Wooden Award when it's all said and done. So plus 3,500 odds, like to go out and speculate with Edey. Mike, let's head back to you. You've got someone that isn't quite as long odds, probably for good reason. One of our favorite guys to watch throughout the college basketball season last year. Who do you like as player of the year for the Big East? Big Ten?
I know that hurts you to say that because there were some DFS nights where he burned you, but you happen to play him on the 2 or 3 games that he didn't just go off for 20 and 15. So Trace Jackson Davis, you're going to be at plus 2,000. I mean, he's a double-double guy, super experienced. It's going to be challenging for Big Ten Player of the Year along with Hunter Dickinson. Averaged 18 and 8, over 2 blocks a game. Man, if he's coming back because scouts saying that he needs to work on his 3-point shot. So if he adds even a 33% long ball to his game, he's going to be super valuable and someone that is going to be pretty tough to stop. So, I think whereas the conference as a whole, it's a little bit tougher to gauge who's going to be at the top at the very end. I think it's pretty much 2-3-man race between TJD, Edey, and then I think Jay, you want to talk about kind of your guy that you think is going to make some noise and potentially be a National Player of the Year candidate?
Yeah, you teased it there. For me, it's Hunter Dickinson. I gushed about him when I was talking about Michigan earlier, and I'll gush about him again. He's in terms of a conference that's wide open, not only just teams, but in terms of superstar power. Dickinson is that guy that's coming back. Was second team All Big Ten last year, but if he doesn't finish first team All Big Ten and if not the best player in this conference, I would be surprised at even at 18 plus 1,800 to win the Wooden Award. He was our number 7 on our countdown, the latest video that's been posted for us. 7'1" guy, can pound it the rock inside, a good passer, average a block and a half a game. I think that number can actually even go up this year if he improves on that a little bit. This is a guy that on a nightly basis in the Big Ten is going to have his way with this conference. So the numbers are going to pile up. The stats will be there. And if Michigan is winning, this is a guy that will be in the conversation nationally for this award.
Yeah, I mean, just the most Big Ten list of players that we run through there, right? Big Ten runs through the big men. So we've got Edey, TJD, and Hunter Dickinson as our favorite bets for player of the year. We're going to move a little bit closer to the comfy confines of home, talk about the Big 12. Obviously, we've got the returning national champion Kansas Jayhawks sitting in this conference, but somewhat surprisingly, not that big a favorite to come out of the Big 12, right? So absolutely loaded yet again, right? It feels like this conference is always a buzzsaw. Jay, why don't you kick us off and give us a little bit of a homer take to start our Big 12?
Happy to, man. Happy to. Yeah, this is a conference where we haven't seen much. We didn't see any movement really from last night when we really started talking about this stuff and putting this together. I'm going to talk about Texas coming out of this conference at plus 350 to win the conference, and plus 2,200 to win the national title. And hey, my guy Pat McAfee says Texas is winning the Natty this year, so why
Let's
not?
go, Pat.
At 2,200, let's go, Pat. But no, Texas, with Chris Beard coming in, playing that tough defensive style that drives me and Mike crazy sometimes. Not the defensive style, but the pace that comes with it. You know what you're going to get from a Chris Beard coach team. He didn't sit pat with what he had on this roster in terms of the talent. He's worked the transfer portal in year one, and he's worked it again with top transfer Tyrese Hunter coming in from within the conference, coming over from Iowa State, can play the point. And for me, Marcus Carr really felt like he was playing out of place for most of the season last year. This is going to allow him to play off the ball a little bit more, play a little bit more of his natural setting and excel. And I think that's really going to help Texas in the long run. Timmy Allen, obviously versatile player, can play both ends, has that silky smooth 15-foot jumper from the elbow. And then you've got Dylan Mitchell coming in, the talented freshman that can absolutely jump out of the gym and be a force on the defensive side of the ball. So, like, if they can get past some of the shooting woes that they had last season, and then when you combine that with just the absolutely snail-like pace that they played with at times, Texas can definitely win this conference. As we look at these odds on our screen here, very top-heavy, but any one of these teams at any night can beat any of these other teams. But I do think that Texas at plus 350 has some good value there because of the talent, just flat-out talent on this roster. Texas should be considered to be a favorite to win this regular season conference.
Yeah, again, super talented team for the Texas Longhorns. I do feel like some of the guys that they actually saw walk out the door almost kind of helps their position, right? It felt like Chris Beard was having a real hard time pinning down what the most effective rotation was. So now he's got a little bit clearer picture. Definitely like the plus 350 odds. Mike, let's head over to you. Not surprising to say the least that you refuse to talk about another team located in the state of Texas. So who you going with here in the Big 12?
I mean, since the Big 12 has become a conference here, it feels like Kansas has won every year. And now they're getting good football. So what is happening? Kansas being plus 215, plus 1,300, reigning national champs. So plus 1,300 on the national scene. Tough, right? A lot of talent out the door. A lot of it's in the NBA now. You talk about Braun, Obagi. Been watching them as the NBA season's kind of started. McCormick, the big man's no longer there. Seems going to be really young, but they're going to count on Jalen Wilson and DeJuan Harris, who are two returning starters. Jalen Wilson, my favorite to be the Big 12 Player of the Year. DeJuan Harris is a menace on the defensive side. If he can just grow a little bit offensively, that's going to be pretty scary. You can't count out Bill Self, right? Like, the guy knows what he's doing. He's just elite at what he does. But he went out and plucked one from inside the conference from Texas Tech, and that's Kevin McCullough. He was a top 100 transfer on our board, and man, the guy can play multiple positions. 6'6", 6'7" guy that can really pass. Not really an outside threat, but he can make a bunch of different things happen. You can play a bunch of different combinations with him, and he's a really good defender. They're bringing in a top 5 recruiting class. It's just what they do, right? Our guy Grady Dick, we've talked about him when we were doing our preview. Ernest Yuta, he's kind of going to come in and need to be that shot blocker. But we heard a lot about MJ Rice during camp, and this guy was a 5-star prospect and, someone that can really fill it up. I don't think he starts, but, anytime you have 5-star talent coming off the bench, like, you're going to be a serious player. So, until I see anything different, really, it's tough to not just put your money on Kansas.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned MJ Rice there at the end, a guy that our friend Matt Tate talked about and absolutely was singing his praises when we were interviewing him a couple months back. And the thing that I like most about this Kansas pick, reigning national title, right? Reigning national champion, plus 215, right? Their opponent in North Carolina, plus 140, right? Like their odds to win their own conference are longer than that of the team they beat in the national title game. So while they are the favorite, while they are the rock chalk, dare I say, they still offer pretty decent value at plus 215. I will be the one who will talk about a team located in Texas, not named the Longhorns. That's the TCU Horned Frogs, plus 900 to come out of the Big 12, plus 4,500 to win a national championship. The thing for me that immediately jumps off the page, returning all 5 starters, right? That is huge. That level of consistency really goes a long way when you talk about a team that has deep playoff contention in their sights. Last year, 15th in defensive efficiency, very much so a theme for the Big 12 in basketball. Very slow paced, very strong defensive teams. Specifically, what they do well, number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. So you talk about defensive minded teams. You talk about teams that are going to slow the pace down. If you can get a couple extra possessions by cleaning up your own boards, you are in a very strong position. It's got playmakers, including Mike Miles Jr., one of the guys that we covered on our top 20 countdown over on TikTok. And they've got, a big front line with Eddie Lampkin Jr. out there. So a lot of things to like about these Horned Frogs. Ultimately, plus 900 feels like pretty good value because this Big 12 has a lot of tough teams in it, right? It's going to be hard to say sitting here in late October who's going to be the one to come out. So someone sitting at plus 900 odds are odds that I like a lot. Close us out here, Mike. Who do you like as a potential long shot from the Big 12?
Well, I did it in the Big 12 preview. I got to do it again. We're going to talk about Oklahoma, plus 3,000. I like Porter Moser, man. Love what he's doing, right? I mean, I get it. You can't have every team in the Big 12 in the big dance last year, but the team was top 40 in offensive and defensive efficiency last year. And it just so happened that they tied for 7th, and Iowa State got the 7th bid out of the Big 12. So realistically, 8 teams should have gotten in, maybe even a 9th. But yeah, it's just crazy how loaded this team is. There's going to be more scoring on the floor for these guys. I mean, the transfer portal, man, Mosher doesn't really play an exciting offense, like, kind of like a Chris Beard. They want to slow the game down. They want to play in the 50s, but it's going to be hard to when you have Grant Sherfield and Joe Bamsile out there, who are dynamic scorers. Grant Sherfield is one of my favorite players, a little bullish on where I had him rated in our top 100, but I've seen what the guy can do on the West Coast of Nevada, and he's going to come in and, Porter Moser can unlock a little more offense to this. It's going to be absolutely scary. The Grubbs brothers coming in from Eastern Washington, they played Kansas a few years ago in that tournament game, and everybody was gushing over Tanner and Jacob Grubbs. They come over to Oklahoma. They struggle because it is the Big 12, and now they're in year 2. So, Tanner looked good at times. I think that just with a year under their belt, you understand what this conference is about. So, man, plus 3,000. I really like me some Oklahoma, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about one of the bigger snubs when it came to tournament time last year. This is a team that, by all measures and accounts, should have found their way into the dance and was ultimately on the outside looking in. So, plus 3,000 for a team that has a lot of the returning talent and the foundational things you like makes good sense to me. It's a bet that I like if I'm looking for an underdog. We'll shift gears here and talk about our player of the year favorites. I alluded to mine a little bit earlier. It's Mike Miles Jr. coming out of TCU, plus 5,000 odds. 6'2" point guard, averaged 15.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, almost 4 assists, and over 1 steal per game. So there's literally, no matter what was happening in the game, Miles was in a good position to contribute in a positive way for the Horned Frogs. Had a chance to go to the NBA, ultimately turned it down because he's trying to make a deep run here. He's trying to make history at TCU, right? So, if he's going to live up to that vision that he's laid out for himself, he's got a decent shot at least being in the mix for the Wooden Award when we get to the end of the year. So Mike Miles Jr. plus 5,000 is my choice. Mike, looks like you're sticking with the Jayhawks. Who's your choice to potentially win Player of the Year from this squad in Kansas?
Yeah, it's going to be Jalen Wilson plus 1,800. Feel like his role's going to grow. Now that Abaji, Braun are gone, McCormick, it's going to go through him. And I feel like he's the type of guy that can have an 18, 18-9 with maybe 3 or 4 assists a game. Be pretty good on the defensive end. He's going to be the go-to option there. So, Kansas, Rock Chalk, like you said, plus 1,800.
Like it. Jay, let's round out the Big 12 here. I'm sure there are probably 5 to 9 guys from UT that you like to win Player of the Year. So why don't you just tell us which one you're picking?
No, man, I'm actually, Baylor is somebody that we haven't mentioned yet, who have pretty good odds to win this conference. And I'm going to go with another freshman. I had a freshman earlier that I tabbed a little bit more. I'm going to tag Keontae George from Baylor here at plus 6,000 to win the National Player of the Year award. Super, super electric. I mean, when you watch the guy play, this is a basketball player, period. And I've said this before, whether or not we want to give Scott Drew credit for what he's doing over at Baylor or not, like this, bringing in a player like this to continuously stay on top or near the top of this conference is super impressive. And all they do is really win basketball games over there. So this is another McDonald's All-American. This is actually, I believe, the 5th that they're bringing in the history of Baylor's campus. He averaged almost 23 points per game in the Global Jam this summer and dropped a 37 spot against Canada. It's just when you get into a pool of that size of talent and you're dropping a 37 spot, it's super, super impressive. He can play on or off the ball. Super good defender and rebounder for his position. And this is a guy that some people think is definitely a top 3 player. And there's whispers about this guy being a number 1 overall pick next year. Keontae George plus 6,000 for Wooden Award is where I'm going in this conference.
Man, Jay sticking with the young bloods. I mean, if you got a guy that hasn't played a minute at the college level yet and is already getting NBA lottery whispers associated with him, clearly you got a talented dude. So plus 6,000 odds is something that is pretty intriguing to me. We will swing out west and talk about the Pac-12 now. Another interesting conference, another one that really feels like it's kind of top heavy, right? But in terms of the teams up top, determining which is the one that is going to reign victorious and win the conference, potentially push for a natty, is not quite as clear, right? So, Jay, why don't you kick us off? Of these teams coming out of the Pac-12, which is the bet in particular that kind of caught your eye?
Oh, you look at the team that won the regular season and the conference tournament titles last year, and that's Arizona, plus 190 to win this conference, plus 2,500 to win the national championship to cut down those nets. Tommy Lloyd, their head coach, was absolutely awesome in year one. You take over a team and immediately lead them to a regular season and conference tournament titles. That's super impressive. We have Azuolas Tubelis battled injury, but looked like the best player on the team last year for long stretches of time, with 3 other NBA-type players on the floor. You've got guard Kerr Kriisa back, who averaged almost 10 points a game, and is one of those guys where, again, you just look at him and you're like, that's a dude that I want rolling on my squad. That's the type of guy that you want on your team, on a winning team, I should say, and Kriisa is going to provide that for Arizona. Now, Eric, you talked earlier about sort of those addition by subtraction players from Texas. And I think one of those guys is Courtney Ramey, who ended up in Arizona this year from that Texas squad. Ramey ball is something, that's a phrase that I like to use, that we like to use quite often. He definitely marches to the beat of his own drum, but he can be the best guy on the floor at times if he's on. And that's what I think he's going to bring to Arizona. If Coach Lloyd can sort of keep him under control, which, no, I've never seen a coach keep Courtney Ramey under control, but is definitely talented enough to provide what he needs to for this Arizona team. And then you've got Larson coming back with a little bit more opportunity, a guard that has a potential breakout season again. I like to talk about these guys that can have these breakout type of years, and Larson is a guard for Arizona that, for me, if given the minutes, can definitely contribute to this team. Didn't see it last year, was in a much more limited role, but because of some of those ins and outs with these players, he's going to get another look at it. So I like Arizona in this conference at plus 190.
So color me surprised that the team that picked up a UT transfer is the one that caught your eye. But to be fair, chatted with Bruce Prasko over the course of the summer. He covers these Wildcats, and he was pretty bullish on what Ramey can do in this system. So not all blatant homerism. It actually sounds like Ramey's found himself a good spot with the Wildcats. Mike, moving over to you. So Arizona's off the board. Anyone else here in the Pac-12 that jumps out as potential good place to go place a bet?
Yeah, I like Oregon. Every year I like Oregon. Last year they let us down, but plus 500 to win the conference and plus 5,000. I mean, Dana Altman, man, he's just consistent. He's always getting great players. Will Richardson, someone on Prize Picks, we just kept playing the over on his points line and just kept hitting that for the first 2 months of the year. He's back. He's a great 3-point shooter. Been in the system a long time, and now he's going to get some transfer help at the guard. That's going to be Keyshawn Bartholomew, who was a starting point guard for Colorado. Jermaine Cuisnard, who I think wasn't used correctly at all at South Carolina. He has breakout potential in this kind of wide open system. And I mean, if you look at the front court, Superman here, Kello Ware, he's a 5-star freshman and somebody that could be a top 10 pick. Looking like an elite front court. Quincy Guerrier, we played a ton of him a couple of years ago with Syracuse. He came over last year. Just didn't seem like he quite fit, but this is his second year in the system. Feels like he's going to kind of break out. And then, Nafali Dante, and he's just a shot blocker. So you have so many pieces with Oregon. I think obviously you're going to talk about a team here that's super consistent. I think if Oregon finds any consistency, this is a bet that I really like more on the conference side than the national title side. But plus 500, I don't mind a few bucks on that.
Yeah, you mentioned the conference side compared to the national side. Plus 500 for the conference, plus 5,000 for the national title. So it seems like the guys out in the desert tend to agree with that sentiment. And I remember watching Dante last year do just an absolute menace defensively. So if they can get anything out of the incoming freshman, where that front court certainly looks to be very stout, I'm actually going to take the chalk here in the Pac-12. I'll go with UCLA plus 190 to win the conference, plus 1,600 to win the national championship. Coach Mick Cronin has done a fantastic job. He's heading into, I believe, his 4th season here with the Bruins, and they have they've got a lot of returning power. Right, it starts with Tyga Campbell. It starts with Jaime Jaquez Jr. Two guys that are very familiar with the system, that have proven to be effective. Playing in their time at UCLA, but they've also got some new blood coming in, right? 2 5-star freshmen set to burst onto the scene. Amari Bailey, Adam Bona, 2 guys that should be able to plug in relatively quickly to Mick Cronin's system. And ultimately, like we've seen out of UCLA for a little while now, going to be really tough defensively. And they've got playmakers at guard that can, really do a lot of things, right? They like to play through Jaquez in the post, really good distributors on this team, just super solid from top to bottom. Hence why they're the favorite, again, plus 190 to come out of the Pac-12. Mike, before we shift gears here, any other teams? I mentioned that it's very top-heavy here in this conference. Any teams a little bit further down the list that you think offer some interesting value?
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite long shots since Arizona State. I don't know why I do this to myself, plus 2,500. I mean, Coach Hurley, I don't know what's going on. He's got to figure it out, though. And I think it really starts with the roster, man. This is a talented roster. This is a top 4 roster in this league, it feels like. I mean, Marcus Bagley, yes, Marvin Bagley's brother, feels like he's been injured forever. He's coming back. And, man, the guy is just a knockdown shooter, good size on the wing. The Cambridge brothers are joining up forces. Desmond's coming over from Nevada, who is a dynamic scorer. Devin's coming in from Auburn, where he's looking for more opportunity. So they're going to bring a lot of toughness. Warren Washington is also coming from Nevada, and he's a shot blocker, gives a paint presence. He's a 7-footer, something that Bobby Hurley did not have last year. It's crazy. You look at it, DJ Horn was the leading scorer last year, and he's probably going to come off the bench. Can these guys accept these roles? I mean, that's going to be the big key here. And can he manage these, personalities? Frankie Collins is probably going to start at point, transfer from Michigan. And he hasn't really had a stable point guard. He had Remy Martin, but he was more of a scoring point guard. We saw that. He was a microwave off Kansas' bench when he was finally healthy last year. Well, Frankie Collins is more of your prototypical, run-the-show type point guard. So a lot of weapons here for Arizona State, man. They're one of my favorites, especially in the Big Ten and Pac-12 have – it feels like they're a little more wide open than some of these other conferences. I know that we're – we're looking at some of these odds in UCLA, obviously Arizona, head and shoulders above, but it would not surprise me if Arizona State, if they put all the pieces together, this could be a really dangerous team, or they might fall flat on their face, but it's worth a few bucks.
Hey, when you guys talk about like Mike, you said the microwave, I can't help but think of like the original guy, Vinny Johnson. Is that to me? I immediately go right there. Love that guy from the late '80s, early '90s in Detroit. I just had to get that in there because that when somebody says the microwave, I think Vinny Johnson, man.
And shout out Vinny Johnson. And to be fair, Remy Martin coming off the bench for the eventual champion Jayhawks was absolutely a microwave. Dude got hot quick. The thing for me with Arizona, yes, it could fall flat. That's why they're plus 2,500. But that cohesion that you're looking for, I mean, Frankie Collins is in a good position to offer, right? He can run this offense. He can distribute the ball well. So definitely like that call. We'll move over here to player of the year odds. I talked about him a little bit earlier, but I'll stick with Tiger Campbell, plus 3,000. All the reports out of camp is that he has had a fantastic offseason, really turning into more of a scorer as opposed to just a facilitator. I should say he's kind of adding the scoring to his bag of tricks. And last year, he wasn't a slouch offensively, right? Scored almost 12 points a game, did distribute the ball well, 14.3 assists per game. Fairly effective from deep, 41% from behind the arc, right? So if he's feeling more confident, if he's taking more shots, and he's able to get anywhere near that 41% rate from deep, definitely going to be a splash player on the national scene. So plus 3,000 feels like pretty solid odds to me. Mike, let's go back to you. Who do you like to potentially win the National Player of the Year coming out of the Big 12?
Yeah, Jay talked about
Pac-12.
Arizona. Pac-12, yeah. Jay talked about Arizona and Tabellus, plus 3,500 for National Player of the Year. With all those guys in the NBA now, Dalen Terry, Benedict Mathurin, Christian Koloko. It's going to open up a lot of opportunity. This guy already averaged 12 points a game, 6 boards. I mean, man, this could be a 20-10 guy. And if Arizona makes noise and they do the things they're supposed to do, and they break out from a team that's maybe supposed to take a slight step back on the national scene, if he keeps them up there, I mean, yeah, this guy 3,500. I like that as an inside-outside game. Can obviously get a little bit better on the defensive end, but that's pretty good value.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it, and this is arguably the best player on a team that should be in the mix for the conference itself, right? So definitely not mad at that call. Jay, round us out here in the Pac-12. Who do you like to potentially come away with the Wooden Award?
Yeah, we all like somebody at these top 2 teams and who we at least figure to be in these top 2 teams. I'm going to stick with Jaime Jaquez Jr., UCLA at plus 1,500. This is a guy that we've covered in our top 20 countdown of returning players, 6'7" forward, super versatile on both ends of the floor. One of those guys that, again, if UCLA is going to come out of this thing and win this conference, he is a guy that will show up on your highlight reel, but he also does all of those things that just makes your team better. And voters dig that stuff, right? Like, yeah, you'll see him score his points, and if UCLA is going to be successful this year, all of those averages that he had, almost 14 a game scoring, nearly 6 boards a game, little over 2 assists. He's one of those that does a little bit of everything. And I feel like if UCLA is going to possibly win this in the regular season and succeed at the national level, that Jaquez is going to be somebody that's going to lead UCLA to that point. And that's why I like those odds at plus 1,500 for the Wooden Award.
Man, little strange for you not to be picking an incoming freshman. And I see you going up against my Tiger Campbell pick. So either we're going head to head, or the other side of the coin, we've got the UCLA track well covered. So
Yep.
Whichever way it is, we will move on to the SEC, another conference like the Big 12 that is absolutely loaded, right? A lot of teams in here that can not only push for a conference title, but teams that have the horses to make a run on the national level, right? So a lot of teams like, a lot of lines that look pretty interesting to me. Jay, going over to you, which is the one that feels like the best value based on what we know about these teams today?
I'm going to go with Tennessee, and I'm kind of surprised you didn't lead in with the homer talk since Barnes used to be the coach at Texas. But I'm going to go with Tennessee there at plus 350 to win this conference and plus 3,000 to cut down the nets in March. Barnes has always been a great recruiter. Like that's never been something that has escaped him. And he's also a great defensive mind, and the style of basketball that his teams play has them in it every single night. Not a ton of weaknesses at all on this roster. You can see, as we see here, they're the tied for the second favorite here with Arkansas in this conference. When you have a team like this that just doesn't have a lot of holes, it's really easy to want to to get in on them, especially at plus 350. Vescovi coming back, returning guard. Jordan Josiah James, both of those guys are potential player of the year candidates in this conference. Zakai Ziegler had a really, really good freshman year and is another one of those guys, like I like to talk about, that can break out and push Tennessee over the top here. Was a baller off the bench last year, was stuck behind Kennedy Chandler, wasn't taking those minutes away from him. Now we might see Ziegler step up and get the opportunity to show everything that he's about. And then we talk about the elite recruiting. 5-star forward Julian Phillips comes in, super elite athlete, pedigree to be a dominant player. Barnes does it again, reloads, restocks. Tennessee is going to be solid this year again, and I really dig it at plus 350 for this conference.
Yeah, for the record, I was going to save my dig about your homer pick for after why you explained your choice to go with Tennessee. But nonetheless, Rick Barnes is doing it again, right? He's got a super solid squad there, coming off of an SEC title from last year. A lot of things to like about the Volunteers. Mike, keeping it moving here in the SEC. Again, loaded conference. Which team kind of jumps off the page as one that you'll be making a priority when you're filling out your betting slip?
I'm going to have to go with Coach Cal, man. Plus 180. You know, I feel like the Kentucky faithful, right, are getting a little anxious with this guy now. But all he does is bring in talent, and at the end of the day, he is a winner, right? So plus 900 on the national championship side. There's plenty of talent on this team, as there is every year, right? I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe's an absolute monster. We saw that. How Bob Huggins let him get away. I bet you that really stings. But National Player of the Year last year, and all the guy does is just dominate the paint. I mean, you're bringing in 2 5-star freshmen again. I don't know if this guy's ever not had multiple 5-star freshmen coming in. We see it every year, these guys going into the draft. Casey Wallace from here in Texas, he is a combo guard, probably the pound for pound, the best defensive player coming in from the high school range. Chris Livingston, I mean, he's like a wiry 3-4 man, so he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And the thing that was missing from Kentucky was kind of someone that you could just give the ball to and make some things happen on the offensive end. I feel like they addressed that with getting Illinois State transfer Antonio Reeves. He averaged 20 points per game. I feel like, late shot clock, he's that guy you can give the ball to and just make something happen. Severe Wheeler, he's obviously one of the top point guards in the country. Great assist man, but he's got to stretch the floor. So he's got to do a better job of shooting the 3 ball. And we're hearing a lot of good things about Jacob Toppin this summer. His expansion of his game from the 3-point line. So an absolute dangerous team. CJ Frederick, man, we talked about him, transferred from Iowa. Last year just sat out due to injury, and that's more 3-point shooting. So how can you not like Kentucky? The only problem is if they run into someone with the mascot of like a peacock or a one of those weird ones that not a lot of people have heard about. So just got to get over that hump. And I think if they do, obviously they're going to be a dangerous player at both the conference level and the national scene.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're yet again, right, loaded from top to bottom. Those national championship odds plus 900, right, some of the shortest there in the country. So they've got public sentiment behind them, driving that price tag up a little bit on their odds. But again, for good reason. Another team out of the SEC that is absolutely loaded is my choice, the Arkansas Razorbacks, plus 350 to come out of the conference, plus 1,500 for the Natty. I mean, we can gush over this Kentucky roster all we want, but I mean, there's an argument that can be made that Coach Musselman has put together an even more talented roster top to bottom, right? It's just this team is incredibly talented. Again, they're super deep, and the rich get richer. Added the number 2 recruiting class with certainly a lottery pick, someone that is being touted as a potential number 1 or top 3 overall pick in Nick Smith, suiting it up for the Razorbacks this year. And they got busy in the transfer portal as well, right? Picked up the Mitchell brothers coming from Rhode Island, Trevon Brazile from Missouri. I mean, the list really goes on. This Arkansas team was already one that was incredibly talented and that was in a strong position to make some noise in the SEC, and they have added through any means necessary. They're adding a very strong recruiting class. They got after it in the transfer portal. There's just a lot of things to like about Arkansas. Kind of like I was talking about with some of the teams we covered earlier. Plus 350 to come out of the conference. It's going to be tough to win the SEC this year, but whoever does, I think potentially has the inside track to win a natty, right? So plus 1,500 on the national title odds might be my more preferable or favorite of the two bets for the Razorbacks. Before we switch gears, Mike, any other teams here in the SEC that are a little bit further down the list that you think are worth a look, or maybe a little bit of speculation?
Yeah, I think we got to talk about Flo Rida. We've always, the Florida Gators here, plus 1,800 to win the SEC. You talked about the SEC is going to be tough, man. One thing you got to have in order to challenge for the top is going to be talent. And you have Colin Castleton, top 20 member. Guy just a dominating low post presence, but you can play through him. He can facilitate. Just a really good passer. And then you bring in an awesome transfer haul. I mean, you look at it, man. You get Kyle Lofton from St. Bonaventure, is arguably the top guard from the mid-major ranks. Can really run the show. I think he's been 4 straight years, at least his 5th year, 4 straight years of being on the Atlantic 10 teams. So postseason wise, and then Trey Bonham can really score. He's from VMI. So, kind of that microwave guy off the bench that we like to talk about. Alex Fudge from LSU just really didn't get to show up, but he was a top recruit. Playing next to our guy Castleton, right? His life's going to be a little bit easier. And then Will Richard had a really good freshman year at Belmont. Just going to continue to grow, good shooter. And then when you have someone like a two-way player, which is, what the NBA is really looking at, Kawasi Reeves, it's like, man, you can really do a bunch of different things. So I like this. I like the odds. It's going to be tough to get over Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas, but if an injury here or there, a tough road win here or there, and things can change in a hurry. So I don't mind it. Someone that we've been bullish with all offseason.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what new head coach Todd Golden does with this Florida system, right? It sounds like he's really planning to overhaul some things in terms of how they actually play. So with such a talented roster here for Florida, definitely a solid choice in terms of an underdog to go out and target. Moving to player of the year, I'll take the easy one. I'll take the boring one, Oscar Tshiebwe. I've got him in to repeat as the player of the year. Obviously won last year, did so by averaging 17.5 points, over 15 rebounds per game, almost 2 steals per game, and a block and a half per game. Shot 60% from the field. So literally anytime you were watching a Kentucky Wildcats game, you saw Tshiebwe just absolutely balling out, making an impact on the game. Obviously, he is one of the favorites to repeat to win the Wooden Award again this year, and for good reason. But plus 750, not the shortest odds out there, right? A little bit of juice on there still. So definitely happy to get the big O there on my list for player of the year. Mike, let's move over to you. You've got someone that is not quite so chalky that's catching your eye.
Yeah, you talked about him a little bit. Nick Smith, dynamic combo guard. He was number 1 or number 2, depending on the recruiting service you looked at him. He's a 3-level scorer, a ton of talent on Arkansas, like we said here. But, he's going to be the guy that's going to make it happen. So if they're able to, push it up and win the SEC and become, a potential, 1 or 2 seed, he's going to be the guy, and plus 2,000 looks pretty good to me.
Certainly it's as well. You round us out here in the SEC. Any players from your top 10 or top 20 countdown that maybe catch your eye?
Mike, you mentioned Florida being your long shot favorite, and I'm going to stick with Colin Castleton, and my guy, your guy, everybody's guy. He is definitely somebody that we've been high on this offseason as we had him in our top 20. He's a walking double-double, not quite the same averages as Tshiebwe, but like add 2 blocks a game in there as well, and that's also a number that I think could maybe even go up a little bit. Doesn't shoot the threes, but for Flo Rida, he is good down low.
Hey.
So I can pass out of the block and everything like that. Game changer on the defensive end. Colin Castleton plus 8,000. If you're looking at some long odds, guys, for the Wooden Award, you could do a lot worse.
You certainly could. Love Castleton's game. Takes a step forward. I do think he'll be right there in the mix. So that will conclude our conference by conference coverage. But that doesn't mean that there is there aren't more teams that are worthy of discussion, right? We've got some mid majors. We've got plenty of teams that don't fall into those Power Five conferences that that should be at least a consideration on your betting slip. So very wide pool, right? Plenty of teams to choose from across the rest of college basketball. Jay, maybe one team that kind of sticks out to you as a team that can potentially make a bit of a run here coming up?
Yeah, we didn't talk about any other Texas teams in when we had our Big 12 conversation just now, but for the sake of this conversation, I am going to stick with the team in the state of Texas, and that's the University of Houston. What Kelvin Sampson has done there on that campus is nothing short of impressive. It's just a matter of putting it all together at the right time, right? So you've got Marcus Sasser coming back, Jermaine Mark coming back from injury as well. And Sampson is not only coaching well with the guys that he has on campus, but he's also recruiting well, bringing in Jerice Walker, one of the highest rated recruits in the last 20 years, to step foot on that campus. I mean, everybody is not necessarily lining up to go to U of H, but they might line up to go play for Kelvin Sampson, especially if he keeps this up and what's going on there. Jamal Sheed broke out after injuries last year and showed he can be a dynamic playmaker. They did lose a little bit out of their starting front court, but the backups are there, guys that got minutes off the bench last year and had some depth, and they're ready for an expanded role. And one of the things that Sampson brings to the table is this is going to be an elite team defensively. That's not going to change. So I like Houston right now at plus 900. I think that you got to really take a gander at that if you're looking at these teams outside of some of these power conferences.
Yeah, not bad at all. And that job that Kelvin Sampson's done for these Cougars is just absolutely extraordinary. So definitely like your call there out of kind of the field of the remaining teams in college basketball. Mike, let's head over to you. Same question that I posed to Jay. Of all of the rest of the teams out there on the national scene, who's someone that kind of jumps off the page to you as a potential value bet?
Yeah, I think this is more than a value bet. I love this team this year. We had a chance to talk about them this offseason. That's San Diego State, plus 6,000. This roster has everything that you would want. First, it starts with Matt Bradley, who came over from Cal the year before, and all the guy does is score. And then you have Nathan Mensah, who is one of the top shot blockers, helping lead this to be one of the top 3 defenses in the country. And one of the things is it felt like this team just didn't have someone to go out and get a bucket, right? Playing that kind of slow grind down game. Well, transferred Darian Trammell, he can score, and he can score really well, and he's been showing out in the preseason. A lot of hype coming out with what he can do in this offense. He's going to be a lead guard. So anytime you add a Bradley and a Trammell, and then Nathan Mensah, and then we heard Jason Ledee. I mean, people have been talking about this kid. He came over from TCU. I mean, it's a potential breakout guy. They're talking about even Mensah's having a hard time stopping this guy. This is one of the better bets here for a national title run. They have all the pieces, and bringing in some of these guys is actually pushing some of their guys that were playing last year, to a bench role or more of a limited role. So, really, really like this one.
Man, our guy Matt Bradley can absolutely fill it up, right? So if you're gonna have a team that potentially can get hot and score the ball pretty much at will, led by Bradley, definitely are going to be in the mix. I'll stick with my boring track. I'll go with the literal best of the rest. Got to talk about the Gonzaga Bulldogs plus 900. I mean, Mark Few has just built an absolute powerhouse of a program up there in the Great Northwest, right? Obviously, they're going to have to navigate the loss of Chet Holmgren, but they are returning Drew Timme, Julian Strother, right? Like guys that have been able to be successful in this system, and they absolutely nailed it in the transfer portal. One of your top 100 guys over at drroto.com, Malachi Smith, coming in from Chattanooga. So, this is yet another year where Gonzaga is going to push for a 1 seed in my estimation, right? So ultimately, you have a team like that is seasoned. They're used to making their way through the tournament and playing in the postseason. Getting them at plus 900 odds just feels like great value to me. Before we switch gears, anyone else, Mike? I know there are a ton of teams to choose from that don't fall in the conferences we talked about earlier. So I want to make sure that if there's anyone else out there that we need to make sure we give them their due, who is that team?
Yeah, I think we got to talk about Memphis. Man, it's a long shot, right? Plus 12,000. But Coach Penny Hardaway, after the tirade last year, this team really turned it around. And, Juwan Howard and him have just had this weird way of holding on to their job and making things happen, right? And, yeah, it's pretty crazy to see because it looks like who's going to play on this team next year. And then by the end of the offseason, they have a bunch of really good transfers, and it starts with Kendrick Davis. I mean, absolute dynamite point guard, and this is going to be an awesome opportunity for him. Elijah McCaden here from Georgia Southern can put up some points. Keontae Kennedy's him and Sully Boom are one of the best backcourts out there for UTEP, and he's coming over. DeAndre Williams, he's an underrated player, really nice. I think he was on the preseason first team list for the AAC. Alex Lomax decided to come back to school, brings a little bit of stability to that guard position. And you have a shot blocker like Malcolm Dandridge, right? That changes a lot on the defensive end. So you got to talk about Memphis. It's super long odds, but anytime you have a player like Kendrick Davis, I mean, in a playoff scenario where it's one and done, right? Put the ball in his hands and things can happen.
Man, absolutely. Davis is going to be so much fun to watch in Memphis this year. So definitely like the long shot there at plus 1,200. Our last group of player of the year choices will all stay home essentially with teams that we just talked about. Mentioned my guy Drew Timme earlier, plus 650 to win the Wooden Award. And for me, like, we've seen him fill it up throughout his tenure there at Gonzaga. If he can take a step forward on the defensive side, I think that's just that little push that kind of gets him over the edge. Last year, 18.5 points per game, almost 7 rebounds, almost 3 assists. Really got it done, multiple ways across the course of his game. Just a little bit more pressure defensively, I think, is kind of that missing piece. Also, I kind of wonder if he gets a little bit of consideration as almost like a lifetime achievement award, right? As he is heading into what is presumably his last season with the Bulldogs. Plus 650 for a guy that can get it done night in and night out is where I will go for player of the year. Mike, why don't you talk a little bit more about the player that we're both looking forward to coming out of Memphis?
Yeah, back to Kendrick Davis, man, plus 4,000. He's the top guy on our transfer board, almost 20 points a game, almost 4 rebounds, 4 assists, stealing a half a game. He's going to give Penny a true point guard. He hasn't really had that yet. So that's really exciting. Going to play with a little more talent than he had at SMU. So you could do worse, right? And Memphis isn't expected to do quite as much as a lot of these teams that we talked about. But if they do, it's through Kendrick Davis. And, he's going to skyrocket with having the help of Penny Hardaway being his coach, just more eyeballs, more votes, things like that. So I really like him there, plus 4,000.
Yeah, a lot to like. Jay, round us out from this pool of players from what we'll call the at-large teams. Who kind of catches your eye as a good bet to place for player of the year?
I mentioned Marcus Sasser earlier when I was talking about U of H, and I'm going to stick with him here at plus 1,200 to win the Wooden Award. He did miss 12 games. I'm sorry, he got knocked out 12 games into the season last year and really didn't get a chance to shine like we all believe that he can. He was averaging almost 18 points a game, almost 3 boards and over 2 assists a game, shooting 44% from 3, The kind of player that is, I look at Sasser like he's lightning in a bottle, right? Like he's the type of guy that at any given time is going to just go on a heater and is going to carry a team. And for me, that's the kind of guy that I want to invest my cash in on a player of the year perspective. He is in our top 20 countdown coming up. And when you're looking at all around guards across the entire country, Mike, you mentioned Kendrick Davis earlier, who comes to mind. But outside of Davis, Marcus Sasser is in that same conversation. And that to me is why plus 1,200 here, I think it's worth taking a look at from a National Player of the Year perspective because he is that good, that talented.
Man, he's absolutely in that conversation. You mentioned him missing a ton of games last year, right? We only saw him in 12 games. He's kind of off the radar, right? Like we're ultimately we're gonna roll the calendar forward a couple of weeks. We're gonna start playing some ball here, and people are gonna realize that Marcus Sasser is a menace, and you're gonna wish you can get him at plus 1,200, right? He's easily gonna creep into the triple digits not long after the season starts, in my estimation. So another guy where you can go out, take advantage of some line movement, get some closing line value. Love the Marcus Sasser call. And that will conclude our betting preview for the upcoming college basketball season. It's almost here. It is right around the corner. For you out there tuning in on YouTube, if you haven't already, make sure you cruise on by and hit those like and subscribe buttons, because One and Done is going to be here all season long, helping you understand the big matchups, the big games, where you can find an edge in the betting market, where you can find an edge in DFS, and ultimately where you can get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.